And welcome into this week's edition of The Locker Room with Gerhard Mathangani. I'm Chase Robinson. Thanks so much for joining us. Great show lined up today. Of course, we'll preview some college football games. Have a great interview with Eli Jenkins coming up a little bit later on as well. But let's start with some college football games. Alabama, rough week last week against Ole Miss. But they got a little easier game this week against Louisiana Monroe, or so people think. 2007, Louisiana Monroe came into Bryant-Denny Stadium, beat them. What's going on this week for the Tide?
You know, this is a good non-conference game for Alabama. We're looking at some of the highlights from last week's debacle in so many senses. But the thing about Alabama that really struck me is they had a -5 turnover ratio in the game against Ole Miss and gave themselves a chance to win late. Now, we will see in this game, because there's really no pressure in this game because they're a lot better than Louisiana Monroe. We'll see in this game just how much they can turn things around. And if they can turn it around and quickly, Bama's a dangerous team to watch out for.
You know, we saw some positives from Alabama. Got the onside kick recovery. You know, they put themselves back in it. What was the thing that kept them from winning it, you think?
I think at the very end, I think they just dug themselves too much of a hole. And then you look at the plays like the kickoff fumble, and then you had another special teams blunder. And then later on in the game, you had the crazy, what we saw in the highlights, it looked like the Auburn-Georgia Miracle at Jordan-Hare play. And it's easy to say you take those things away, it's a different ball game, but you really take those things away and it's a completely different ball game. And so I really think they just dug themselves too deep a hole. They couldn't get out of it, but ULM serves as one of those good games, as a benchmark game, a non-pressure game to get back on track.
You can catch that game 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon, of course, at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Let's move on to Auburn now. They lost last week to LSU.
Right.
Rough game for the Tigers. What was their problem?
You know, I think at the beginning, a lot of it had to do with big number 7, Leonard Fournette for LSU. And we knew going into the season he was a monster, and we had seen in the first part of the season how good he was as a true sophomore. And now we're just realizing that he could be one of the best in the SEC's history. And you run into that buzzsaw, and now Will Muschamp's now in a position where he puts 8 in the box, 9 in the box, and you know, what can you do now with a guy like that producing at that level? And then I think what the key is that Brandon Harris really showed that he could throw the football too. And so he was throwing the football well, and they were running the ball well. Auburn was just no match, just absolutely no match for LSU.
Big news for Auburn this week. New quarterback, Sean White, not the snowboarder, but the football player, will be starting for the Auburn Tigers.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
You know, it's an interesting decision to see, you know, how this came about, because Auburn fans have been clamoring for Sean White to come into the game. They did it at Louisville, then did it at Jacksonville State, and then did it a lot at LSU. And now you're putting them in a position. This, I think, is where it's interesting. You're putting them in a position where now Auburn knows what they have to do. They have to win out. So instead of giving him any quote-unquote varsity reps, Sean White has none. His first will be in a big-time nighttime game against Mississippi State, a very good defense. I just think that the pressure that could have been eased if they put him in earlier, now all the pressure's back on Sean White to kind of be the savior and the hero for this team. It's an interesting decision. Gus Malzahn knows these players more so than we do, but we'll see how it goes.
And that game you can catch at 6:30 on ESPN2. Next up, JSU.
Yeah.
Big numbers again last week. The Gamecocks keep rolling.
They are so fun to watch. And, you know, this was their first conference game coming after that huge overtime game against Auburn. We worried on this show and in other talks that coming off the emotional game, you'll have a bit of a lax coming in the next game. They showed none of that. At the beginning they did, but not later on towards the game. They kind of showed the team they were, but then to a man they all said, hey, we can get better, which is scary because they put up, you know, over 400 yards of total offense, and this team is just rolling behind quarterback Eli Jenkins. Like you said, you'll hear from him later on. But you know, when this team gets rolling like they have been, and Tennessee State is one of the more physical teams in the OVC, JSU is going to be really, really fun to watch.
We talked a little bit about this last week, JSU trying to get to that national championship. Seeing them in conference play, you think that's even more possible?
More so now that I've seen them against one team in Tennessee State, because this is a good team to go up against. It's not like an EKU or EIU, one of the upper echelon teams like JSU is. It's one of those teams that's middle of the pack that can beat JSU, that has a pedigree of beating JSU at Burgess Neufeld. They did it 2 years ago. So with everything that JSU has come across in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, they kind of answered every challenge. Different ways. It's not all wins. They didn't get a win down at Auburn, but they've answered the challenge. And I think that getting that first win under their belt really helps them into UT Martin.
And all the coaches had something to say this week about their teams. So let's hear from Nick Saban now.
There's many lessons to be learned in the last game, and hopefully our players will learn those lessons, and we will do a good job of improving our team in the future so that we can get more consistent execution. We got to address the ball security issues. We got to address getting turnovers, and we've got to eliminate the big plays and the negative plays on both sides of the ball.
Very important, especially when you're playing at home. And we definitely understand that. That's going to be a challenge. They're a very good team, and we need to play well. And like I said, they've got one of the better offensive players in all of college football, and their defense has a lot of guys back from last year that were very, very good players and a very good
We've
team.
been a good road team, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. Martin's a good football team. We knew we had two of our better opponents in Tennessee State, and Martin is the first two, before we get a little break with another non-conference game and an open week before we go into that stretch. But, Martin will be ready for us. They'll be laying in wait, and it's a long trip, and so we just got to handle the travel.
You can catch the JSU game at 2 p.m. Saturday on ESPN3. Well, Gerhard, great college football teams in this state. Auburn's had sort of a rough year, but still high expectations for these teams in Alabama.
All have one loss, and that's the key thing right now. Alabama, Auburn, and JSU all have one loss, so all their goals are still intact. Even for Alabama and Auburn, both chasing spots in that Final Four, all their goals still intact. Now, they need things to happen. Alabama obviously needs Ole Miss to lose. Auburn needs LSU to lose, but these things can all happen throughout the course of the season. JSU's goals are definitely in play as well. So lots of momentum and hope going into these next few games.
That's right, and we'll hear from Eli Jenkins, the JSU quarterback, coming up next.
And we are back in the locker room, inside the JSU locker room here with Gamecock quarterback Eli Jenkins. Eli, you guys picked up your first conference victory last Saturday, home opener as well. Always good to get that under your belt, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It was very good. We played a tough opponent, TSU, great team. They always be good. They've been good over the years. They fought hard. We just came out with the victory.
How do you feel like your team played? There was a lot of talk going into the game. How would you guys respond after leaving spilling so much energy and effort down at Auburn? How did you feel the team played?
Yeah, I think we played very well. We left Auburn at Auburn basically. Like I said before, we watched film, got Auburn over with, and we was focused on TSU. We knew we had to play well to win. I feel like our team played well, even though we left a lot on the field. A lot of plays here and there. I threw an interception. We could have got a couple turnovers here and there, but I'm very proud of my team. We played very well.
I know Auburn is in the rearview mirror now, but it was such an impactful game to a lot of people, especially a lot of JSU fans. You particularly had a fantastic game. You had 26 completions, threw for 277 yards. After that game, a lot of people around the area were saying, JSU has the best quarterback in the state of Alabama. I know it's a team game, but for you, was that gratifying at all to kind of make that kind of statement on that big a stage?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's good to it's good to hear the talk, but I try not to buy into it, because it's a long season. They talking about one game, but shoot, what if I don't produce in the other games? Then what they'll be saying. So I'm just trying to go week by week and, play hard every Saturday so they can keep saying, oh, he's the best quarterback in Alabama. Or eventually, hopefully, he's the best quarterback in the South. He's the best quarterback here and there. But, it's definitely is good to hear people talking.
I know you guys have some big goals this year, high expectations this year for this team, especially having someone like you at quarterback. That position is so important if you're going to do something special nowadays in college football. That game had to give you a lot of confidence, winning your conference opener, a lot of confidence, but you've got some tough ones on the road. Talk about the mission that this team is on this season with the kind of talent you have.
Yeah, we have a lot of talent. At receiver we have Josh Barge, Ruben Gonzalez, Marquise Mero. I can name them all. Up front we have a great O-line that's they've been playing a couple years now, so they have a lot of games up under their belt. They play hard for me. I even got to take them out the other day, and I think they really enjoyed that. So hopefully they keep playing hard. I might take them out again. We got a good team, and I feel like we're gonna go far. As long as we play every week like it's our last week. We don't want to go into the first round, second round, and lose. I feel like we You know, I'm not gonna say upset anybody, but we should have been farther in the last couple of years than we have been, and I feel like that our team know that, and they really want to get that this year.
Eli, you're a redshirt junior. You've been on this campus now for 4 years. You were here with a former coaching staff. You've been here for all 3 of the years that Coach Gross has been here as offensive coordinator, now as the head coach. In that period of time, this offense is putting up staggering numbers, record-breaking numbers. You're a big part of that. Talk specifically to what John Gross has meant to this offense.
Yeah, he meant a lot. Him coming in, you know, giving me the chance to play quarterback has been great. Sometimes I say, like you said, I've been here for 4 years, and I be saying that, hey, I've been here longer than all the coaches. But yeah, it's great playing for him. You know, he brought this offense, and it fits me. It makes it very easy for me to play in because I understand it. You know, certain offenses, you know, they don't fit everybody, but he makes it, you know, simple, so we can be able to play fast. You know, if something doesn't work, you know, he asks us, how do you feel about it? How do you like it? And if we don't like it, you know, he'd be like, okay, you know, we'll take it out. So he's a very understanding coach, and it makes it easy to play for him.
Record crowd here last Saturday, over 23,000. The place was pretty much full. That's probably a first for you since you've been here to see that many people in JSU Stadium. What was it like to play in front of that crowd?
Oh, yeah, it's great. Always great to play in front of our home crowd. You know, we had a red out. You know, the stands were full of red shirts, and you know, it was red all over, and it was great. You know, we took a glance into the stands, and we was like, hey, these people really came out to see us play, and hopefully we gave them a show so they can keep coming back. You know, it's nice playing in front of 94,000 at Auburn, but when you play in front of 23,000 at your home crowd, you know, that's a great atmosphere.
Eli, I appreciate you taking a minute. I know you guys are busy this time of year, obviously. Pretty big schedule. Got another big road conference game on the road this Saturday. Going to be fun watching you guys. You brought a lot of excitement to the JSU fan base. Good luck the rest of the way.
Oh, thank you. You know, it's we plan to put on a show. You know, we plan to go far. You know, so y'all can keep coming back. You know, keep talking to us. So yeah, we got some big things coming.
And thanks so much, Mickey. Great interview there with Eli Jenkins. And Gerhard, let's talk a little about Eli. What a year he's had so far. Could you put him down as one of the best quarterbacks JSU history?
Yeah, I think Mickey touched on it when he touched on the records, and he's had so many single-season records, and I'm pretty sure by the time he leaves, because he has another year, scary as that is, that he'll have a lot of career records. And it goes back to the point that he said that he and Coach Gross and this offensive staff and the running backs that they've had, they've just been on such a cohesive page. Really, ever since Bill Clark was there, they got there, he got comfortable. He won the job. He split it with Max Shortell a little bit. Last year split it, or this past year, splitting a little bit with Christian LeMay. But he's always been the guy, and he kind of knows he's the guy. And now this is the year that he's the guy where he's going to take the majority and the bulk of the snaps. I honestly think that he can do it, and he's sitting in a perfect situation with a very good offensive line, good running backs, good running scheme, and a good coach that understands how he fits in the offense and how the offense can wrap around his skills.
And I think it goes back to Coach Gross here, but when I see JSU play, it seems like they sync together so well.
Yeah, they do, and it goes back to their coaching staff, and it goes back to the fact that, you know, they lost a lot of guys to UAB when Coach Clark left the Jacksonville State program, went to UAB, but Coach Gross surrounded himself with a bunch of other guys that fit his quality, fit his system. So even though they were different faces, they were still the same scheme, still the same message. And then now those faces have now been there for 2 straight years. They're all on the same page, and I think it's showing up in the little things, those little things like Eli Jenkins.
Well, stay here on the locker room with us. We'll talk more college football. We'll have our Pick 6 as well. Stay with us here on TV 24. And welcome back into the locker room. Gerhard Mathangani, Chase Robinson. Mickey Shadricks usually joins us this segment, but not able to join us today. We'll have his picks, though, coming up as well in the Pick 6. But, Gerhard, let's talk some more football. Alabama, rough start against Ole Miss, had some bright spots, but not near enough. Did the change of starting quarterback kind of get the tide off sync, you think?
Maybe a little bit, because Jake Coker started the first 2 games, and we kind of saw where they were. And I think that Coach Saban did one of 2 things. I guess he really wanted to see how Cooper Bateman would handle a starting role, and that's the reason why he started him Saturday, or he wanted to light a fire under Jake Coker. Either way, I think that the Coker deal worked on the back end. So it worked in the fact that I think they now have found their guy, But they might have found it in a way they didn't think they would have to find it by starting another guy and lighting that fire. Now, this is all speculation. This is all just the way I think about it. But I think that they've now settled in on Coker, mainly because what they found out when they started Cooper.
And we saw as soon as Coker came in, had a great run.
Yeah.
Great passes. I mean, it's like he went in there wanting to prove himself, wanting to show that he was that starter.
It was just an extra gear, and you heard the broadcaster saying it during the game. This is something that we hadn't seen from him. And maybe it was just something he just bottled up and he just didn't play as free as he did. But on Saturday, he just felt so free. And it seemed to me as refreshing for Alabama fans and Alabama's football team, now knowing the quarterback that they can probably go to from here on out. I don't think that he's completely won it and Cooper's out of the picture altogether. Right. But I do think that he's now taking the reins and he'll take the majority of the snaps.
That's right. And let's move over to Arkansas. Now, we've been hearing Brett Bielema for weeks now, starting with the Texas high school coaches, what he told them, and now he's going back and forth with Texas Tech's coach. What is it going to take to shut Brett Bielema up?
I don't know if there's anything that can shut him up. He's been talking really ever since he got to Fayetteville. And ever since he left the Big Ten for the SEC, he's just been yapping away. He's been yapping away with Gus Malzahn about a 10-second offense. Now with coaches that he's lost to, he talked about the Ohio State schedule, lost to Toledo. Then he talked about these no-huddle offenses, and then Cliff Kingsbury, beats him on the field. I just think it's in his nature just to yap away, whether he's winning or he's losing. I think he just needs to worry about his own team, because right now they're 1-2 and they don't look very good. He's talking about all this stuff about the SEC losing to two teams that aren't in his conference.
That's right. And now let's move to Auburn. Big shakeup in the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
What does this mean for Auburn?
I think this means for Auburn that they need to find an identity and fast. And I think that with Sean White, I don't know how they're going to play this week in practice, but I think they're going to come in with a sense of, we know what we have to do on offense, and now we have to make Sean White the vessel for what we want to do on offense. And if that works, Gus Malzahn will look like a genius. If it doesn't, it's now hard to go back to Jeremy Johnson, because now you look weak and ineffective. And so I just think it's a deal where he put all his chips and all his eggs in the Jeremy Johnson basket. Now he's putting it all in the Sean White basket. Now, I'm not saying it's all sink or swim, because I still think they can have a good record.
Right.
But if they don't want to end up with the season they had last year, where the wheels fell off at the end of the year, this better work out for them.
And now, what does this mean? You touched on it a little bit. What does this mean for Gus Malzahn moving forward?
It's interesting, because everybody thought, he had the biggest turnaround in college football. Everything's just been so high, low, low. And so I think overall he's fine. People saying he's on a hot seat, I just don't think that's even remotely close to true as of right now. But I think it does make people say, okay, we'll find out what you're about when the chips are stacked against you, and you have to go through some adversity. They found it last year or 2 years ago with Nick Marshall. Of course, they had it with Cam Newton back in 2010. This is that next chapter. We'll see how it unfolds. And
for the Auburn defense, it was expected to be one of the best with Will Muschamp coming in.
Right.
It hasn't. What's the problem?
A lot of the same problems for the last couple of years have just kind of been lurking back. You're seeing a lot of missed tackles and a lot of missed alignment. You knew with Coach Muschamp, you would get an aggressive defense. That's what he brought to Florida. That's what he's brought everywhere he's been, even when he was with Nick Saban with LSU. But I think with this Auburn defense, what you're seeing is they're playing a lot of young guys, because the guys that they had might not have been, cohesive to what they were trying to do.
Right.
So now you're seeing a lot of young guys making mistakes, but they're making big mistakes, which is good, what you want to see. If you want to make a mistake, make a big mistake. But with Muschamp and the fact that you're paying him the highest salary, I think next to Kirby Smart, I just think that there has to be more brought to the field. And this is the first chance for it. And like I said, you don't want the wheels to crumble late, because the expectation was you brought the best defensive coordinator in, you're about to have the best defense.
Well, let's look ahead to some of the games this week in our Pick 6 segment. We'll see our picks. First off, Louisiana Monroe at Alabama. Gerhard, who you got?
Alabama's a 38-point favorite. And honestly, Nick Saban's not one of those kind of coaches that scores in the 50s. But I think that he will let his offense free, and I think he'll let the defense go. And I really think that this is that game where if Alabama's going to galvanize and get to where they were last year, which is losing to Ole Miss and then in the Final Four, this is that game where he lets them loose. I got Alabama big.
I've got the Tide as well. And as we mentioned, Mickey Shadrick's not joining us this segment, but we do have his picks.
Alabama, he's got Alabama winning that game pretty comfortably as well. Next up is Auburn and Mississippi State. Choice.
I've got Auburn in this one. I've been going back and forth
Yeah.
on who I should pick, but I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers. A big change, and I want to see if they can pull it off.
I will go Auburn as well. I don't have that. I didn't have the same kind of confidence this week as I did last week when I picked them, and maybe it's because of the way last week turned out. But I'll go Auburn for right now. Mickey's pick.
Mickey has the Auburn Tigers as well. And next up in our pick 6, we've got JSU and UT Martin.
I think Jacksonville State's just they're sinking right now. They're just gelling on all different levels. UT Martin is the same team that beat Bethel by 70 points but lost to Ole Miss by 70 points. They're just too inconsistent. Jacksonville State right now, they're really consistent. They're where they want to be. It's all Gamecocks.
I'm right there with you on that one. JSU on that one as well.
So is Mickey.
All right, next up, we have Florida and Tennessee, Gerhard.
Battle of two SEC East teams that going into the year people thought was interesting. I like Butch Jones. I like what he's doing over there, but this game is in the swamp, and I just think that Coach McElwain will have something for the Gators there. If this game was in Neyland Stadium, I would pick Tennessee. It's in Florida. It's in the swamp. I'm going with the Gators.
I'm going right there with you. You know, I think McElwain's going to have these boys fired up and ready to play this game, so I'm going Florida as well.
And Mickey, he picked the balls in this one, so we'll have a differentiating viewpoint there. Next up, Big 12, Oklahoma State and Texas.
You know, I've also been going back and forth on this one. Oklahoma State ranked number 24, Texas not ranked, but I'm going to go Oklahoma State in this one. I think they can pull it off.
It feels to me that Texas finds ways to lose games.
Right.
I mean, most teams will stumble into losses. Most teams will get beat. I think Texas finds ways to lose games.
Yep.
They will do it again. The Cowboys will get them.
Mickey has got Texas in this one, so there's another one. We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Next up, move closer to home. It's our Pigskin Roundup Game of the Week, Weaver and Sachs.
Sachs just too much. Weaver played Welborn really, really strong. They had a lead in the after halftime, and they had a lead going in the third quarter. Weaver has a lot, but they don't have enough to beat Sachs.
I'm going with you on that one. Jonathan Miller and Sachs, too much for Weaver, I believe.
Absolutely. Mickey, his pick is in as well. He likes the Sachs Wildcats.
And we can check that game out coming up this week on the Pigskin Roundup. We'll have all the scores and highlights. Of course, Weaver at Sachs is our game of the week. The Pig Trail will be out at Mumford, Glencoe, Ragland, Cherokee County, JCA, and more. Anniston head coach Eddie Bullock, as well as Jacksonville head coach Clint Smith, will be on the show. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter and hashtag Pigskin Roundup. It's been another fun show, Gerhard. Thanks so much for joining us. For Gerhard Mathangani, I'm Chase Robinson. We'll see you next week on The Locker Room.